This is the Ernie Stadbeck Show with your host, Ernie Stadbeck. To get in touch with Ernie, write to Ernie Stadbeck, 378 South Van Buren Avenue, Barberton, Ohio, 44203-4014. By phone at 330-644-7724 or online at erniestad@aol.com. Now, here's Ernie with today's program.
We're at Anthony's beautiful restaurant on Manchester Road out in the Portage Lakes area, and we've got two special guests today. And we're going to start off, rank has its privileges. Number one, Colonel Rick Young, who's a professor of military science with the ROTC at Akron U. And the ROTC has got a special place in my heart. I graduated from Akron U in 1950 and was commissioned in the Army in 1950. Long time ago.
A few years back.
Few years, then went into then it became the Air Force. But I was commissioned in the Army first. But I was also in World War II. Colonel, pleasure having you here.
Thank you for having us.
And can you tell us a little bit about your military career? How long have you been? Where did you get started?
Well, I've been in the Army for almost 19 years now. And I got my start through Army ROTC, actually at the University of Florida. I know the folks in Northeast Ohio have a thing for the Gators right now, but despite that, I was attracted to come here to Northeast Ohio. I've served for 19 years as a chemical officer, and we specialize in the areas of nuclear, biological, and chemical defense. I've had the opportunity to serve in a number of units, and in particular, fond to my heart are airborne units. I have jumped out of perfectly fine airplanes on many of occasions.
I wondered about that. Why would you jump out of a perfectly good airplane? Because you had to?
Well, you're a pilot, right?
Oh, yeah.
You've seen the people that fly those things? Would you rather land with them, or would you rather?
You got a point. You got a point there. Maybe I'd rather jump out.
It's just another method of getting to the battlefield, and that's a particularly great group of people that choose to do that sort of behavior. The paratroopers are, like I said, they're near and dear to my heart. They're a special group. They've got an attitude unlike any other. Perseverance, physical fitness. It's a great place, great atmosphere to be around. And 19 years have flown by. I'm not a guy that intended to be in the Army for 19 years. I intended to just do my initial stint, and that was going to be it. But the people and the thrill of serving my country have kept me in. And then jobs like this, where I get to go work with young people at the University of Akron, are other benefits to service.
At this point, I'd like to say thank you for your service, for you and Captain Smithley.
Well, it's our pleasure. I look at it as an honor to wear this uniform and to represent our country.
Now, did you choose the chemical branch, or did you go airborne first?
Chemical branch came first, and I did, in fact, choose the chemical corps. I was a chemistry major at the university, and while you would think that there's a direct correlation, it's not necessarily. That's not really how the Army works. It's not that particularly technical of a branch. But the idea of protection against those nasty weapons, those nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons, that was an area of interest of mine. And also the Chemical Corps is something that provided me with the opportunity to serve with a number of branches. I've worked with aviation units, I've been in airborne infantry units, I've served at the chemical schoolhouse, I've been again in airborne units, and I've also had the opportunity to do a job like this where I can be the professor of military science at Army ROTC.
You mentioned defensive. How about offensive? Or is that classified?
The days of offensive nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons are long since over. Not quite as far back as the initiation of the transition of the Army Air Corps to the Air Force, but at one point in time we did have, of course, if you look in history, we had those capabilities, Cold War, focus against the Soviet Union, those sort of things, but we recognized as a nation that those were not really the directions that we wanted to head in, and so we chose not to do offensive operations anymore. It's all about protecting ourselves. We got other ways to get at the bad guys.
I guess you have. You know, at an air base near Fort Bragg or any of the other 101st Airborne bases, the quickest way to empty a bar of Army and Air Force guys is say, somebody yell paratroopers, because these guys love to fight. Now, am I overstepping when I say you guys love to fight?
That's a little bit old school, I would think, but not totally untrue. They definitely have got an air about them. Paratroopers do, as well as if you get into any specialty in the military. People that are in the cavalry or are in special operations have all got a particularly closely bonded camaraderie and brotherhood, and they take that very seriously. And of course,
esprit de corps.
yes, and the young guys will occasionally they'll fluff their chest out and they'll try to prove who's best.
The warrior mentality.
Yes.
Well, Air Force guys were never much of fighters on the ground.
No, but as long as they're there when we need them, they provide.
They love to
plenty of
strut
power,
around,
yes.
and all of that, and wow the gals with the wings and that sort of thing. Now, how about your service how many times were you deployed to Iraq? And you were in Afghanistan also?
I was not in Afghanistan. I was in Iraq twice in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. I deployed once with the 82nd Airborne Division. We served in the Western or Al Anbar province, which is included Al-Ramadi and Fallujah, things like that. And then I also served with the 18th Airborne Corps when the Corps served as the multinational Corps Iraq, and I was part of their headquarters element and served in Baghdad for a year.
Okay, what exactly did you do there as far as chemical warfare goes?
Well, when I was with the 82nd Airborne Division, I was the Deputy Division Chemical Officer, and we made sure that all of our troops had their protective gear. We made sure that if there was any opportunities to go investigate the weapons of mass destruction, we went and looked for those and researched whatever that the chain of command asked us to go look at. We also we mainly focused on keeping our troops safe. That was one of the big things. Now, another thing that was a little lesser known, the chemical units within the 82nd Airborne Division, our task force, we worked on destroying the ammunition caches that were over there. As you may have heard in the news, there was ammunition everywhere in the country of Iraq, and part of the challenge has always been trying to get a handle on that. And our guys went around and they would make sure it was safe and there was no chemical weaponry in there, and then they would destroy the rounds so that none of the bad guys could use them.
There's been a lot of talk about some of the residue from the destroyed weapons getting into the air and causing this Gulf War disease. Is that a proper question to ask you?
I think that's more for the medical people. Now, Gulf War syndrome, though, I believe was linked more towards Operation Desert Storm and Desert Shield. And I was there as well. And I personally have no knowledge of it. I know that there's information through the medical channels regarding that, but I'm not real clear. I'm not even sure if they've ever determined the exact cause of the syndrome. It could have been a multitude of chemicals, I'm sure.
Did you run into any bad guys at any time, any IEDs? Did you have to actually go out on patrol also?
With what I didn't go out on patrol too much. We had to conduct operations with other folks that had specialties in nuclear, biological, and chemical areas. Perhaps when we were going out to look for sources that may be out there, and occasionally we had to go out and secure some sources, particularly radioactive sources, such not to be confused with radioactive weapons or dirty bombs, but they wanted to make sure that these particular items were not able to fall in the hands of the wrong folks. So we would travel around the country sometimes and collect those up and make sure that the wrong folks wouldn't get them.
Now, did you have to wear these heavy protection uniforms or suits continuously in that heat?
No, I did not have to do that. Some of the soldiers did initially, especially when the war first kicked off, and there was a huge concern among the leadership about the potential Iraqi use of chemical weapons. And once those operations were done, and most folks didn't have to wear that gear anymore. They use a threat analysis to make sure that you only wear the gear that is necessary for what they perceive the threat to be.
With the temperatures in the summertime, were you there in the summertime? And
Yes.
how hot was it?
Well, it was pretty hot, and I can tell you, when I did my preference sheet for my assignments here to come to be a professor of military science, one of the reasons that Akron, Ohio rated so high was I was filling my preference sheet out in June in Baghdad, and I can tell you that it looked, the cooler weather looked awesome at the time, and it was hot. I don't recall the exact temperatures, but it was, it was not uncommon to be at least 110 to 120 degrees during the summertime.
And wearing the flak vests and the whole shot, full equipment?
And yes, that was hot to do that. But you get used to it. That's why we do physical conditioning, and that's why we try to acclimatize ourselves.
You guys have got to be in great shape to do that.
We try. We definitely try.
And how about your stint here at Akron U? Did you apply for this, or did they assign you to it?
Yes, you have to apply to get a job like this. It's pretty competitive, about a 20% or less selection rate for jobs like this. And Akron, the University of Akron, has got a great reputation that the university is growing leaps and bounds. And I did a lot of research prior to coming here. There's a number of schools that were on the list for that year, and I discussed it with my family. We decided the areas of the country we'd like to live, and I did what I thought was very thorough research on the programs. And the University of Akron and its program have got terrific support in this area. And those are the types of things that I like to look for, so that I know I can go into an organization, be successful, and be around great people. And this is just to be a service member in this area of the country is great, because people, they appreciate you, and that helps you get your job done, makes you feel good about what you're doing.
Now, how long will you be here?
Right now, I will be here at least till summer of 2009. There's a possibility of staying for at least another year, and I'm waiting for the
Well, you want to see
big
the
Army
new
guys.
football stadium, don't you?
Yes.
2009 season? My goodness.
I want to see the kickoff of the InfoCision Stadium Bowl. I can't recall the exact terminology. but
Yeah, it is
InfoCision-
Info. That's right. I called it the Akron U Bowl, but it's Info, yeah. Now, how many young people do you have enrolled in ROTC?
We have about 70 students right now.
Men and women? How many women?
That's a good question. I would tell you that we have, I can't remember the number. I remember we just did a report on this, and I believe that we had approximately 18% ladies in the program. So whatever 18% of 70 is, I would guess 10% is 7, probably about 15. No, that'd be too many then. Probably about 12, 13.
Are there more young women becoming interested in the military career? Are most of these people interested in going on to a military career?
You would be amazed how many students come and tell me that I want a career in the military.
Mm-hmm.
And I always caution them. I'm like, whoa, easy. You haven't even, you haven't served your first day before you make a decision on a career. That's great to have those aspirations, but maybe you should start your career and then determine if that's really right for you. But a lot of people, I think they just look forward to a little bit of an adventurous lifestyle and seeing the country and the world. And the Army's got great benefits and probably a retirement package that's unlike any other, I would think.
Is it a 2-year program?
It can be a 2 to 4 year program. I know that's probably not the direct answer, but you can come in and matriculate through all 4 years, and there's also methods. There's a camp you can go to make up some time, and other ways that you can double up on some classes.
So when they finish an ROTC program, can they opt to go in full-time, go into the regular Army, or is it just they go into a reserve status?
Large majority of our students go on active service. It's very competitive to go on active service. We typically, not everybody that asks to go active gets active, but we commission officers and they go to the active force, the U.S. Army Reserves, and the Army National Guard.
Well, that's a great commercial for the ROTC, and once
thank you.
again, I was there, so I appreciate what you folks are doing in the ROTC program. Thanks a lot, Colonel Young, Professor of Military Science at Akron U.
Thanks.
Our next guest is Captain Lindsey Smithley from the ROTC detachment at Akron U. Captain, nice to have you here.
you for having me.
Holy smokes, I'm outranked by a captain. I wound up a first lieutenant, and my arm's going to get worn out saluting.
no.
I had a colonel on, now I've got a captain.
Keep you on your toes.
Right. Can you tell us a little bit about your background in the military? Why did you choose the military?
Sure, well, I grew up in Minnesota. After I graduated from high school, I went to the United States Military Academy at West Point. I graduated from there and was commissioned as an aviation officer. So I went down to Fort Rucker and I learned how to fly. I flew Black Hawk helicopters. I then went up to Fort Drum with the 10th Mountain Division and spent a couple years there. While there, I deployed to Afghanistan and served about 10 months there. After that, I went back to Fort Rucker for some schooling, then ended up in Korea and spent a year over there. And I don't know, when I was getting ready to choose my career path, the Army seemed like a great way to have some adventures and see the world. It's been a great experience so far. I've met some wonderful people, some best friends I'll have forever, and it's been a good time.
And living in Minnesota, that was kind of prompted you to join the Army.
Exactly.
To get out of the
maybe
weather
get
there.
somewhere warm.
Right. Isn't that odd? Colonel Young said the same thing.
Right.
Only he went to a real hot spot.
Exactly.
Were you in Afghanistan in the summer or winter? Or?
Yeah, we got there in the summer, and it was hot. I'm not sure it was quite as hot as Iraq, but it was pretty warm. So.
You're a Black Hawk helicopter pilot.
Yes, sir.
That's impressive. Now, the Black Hawk is a combat machine, isn't it? You had
Right.
door gunners and the whole shot?
Right. It's primarily used for more transportation and cargo, hauling people and supplies. But there are, in combat situations, they do have door gunners on them. Mm-hmm.
Weren't you in a combat situation anytime you're in Afghanistan?
Yes,
Yes, I
we did
imagine.
have guns on them.
Did you get shot at? Could I ask you that?
I fortunately never was shot at, which I know my mother was glad to hear, but I didn't get to fly a whole lot while I was there. I was more in a staff position, but the few times I did fly, it was quite an amazing experience. You'd be flying through, there wouldn't be anything around. It's desert down there in the south, and all of a sudden you'd see this caravan of people walking with their camels, and it was almost like a whole different world, but it was an incredible experience.
Here's a question I've always wanted to ask. I've asked a couple ex-helicopter pilots. When they, especially in Nam, when they'd go down through the passes, the first guy always got through, but they always waited and shot the next guy down. The second, is that right? Now, who in the world would want to fly the second helicopter?
I don't know if that's just luck of the draw or.
But I was telling this, I asked the same thing to a fellow who was a helicopter instructor down at Rucker, 2,500 instruction hours, so he
Wow.
was there quite a while. And I asked him, how come? And he says, here's what happened. He says, 1 week ago, my brother-in-law was shot down in Iraq. He's flying for Blackwater, civilian.
Oh, okay.
And he was a second helicopter. I thought, I should never have asked that question. That kind of ended the conversation right there. But can you tell us a little bit about your helicopter training? Why did you pick helicopters?
Well, it just seemed so neat to be able to fly. It just seemed amazing. You know, as a cadet at West Point, I would see them during our summer training. They came and we got to fly in them, and it just seemed so neat. So I knew that was what I wanted to do. At Rucker, it was 15 months of training, and we start in little helicopters, little jet rangers, and kind of get the basics down. When you first start, they teach you how to hover, and you'd think that would be the easiest thing to learn because it's just keeping the helicopter still, but it's actually very difficult, so it takes a lot of practice. Once you get that, it gets a little bit easier. Then you kind of work your way up into a little bit more of a military helicopter, and they teach you some military tactics, and then once you pass that, they put you into your Blackhawk or Apaches or Chinooks, that type of thing.
Now, the big one we see over here at the Akron
Right,
Canton Reserve Base, now that is what, a C-47?
CH-47, yep, that's the Chinook.
They call that the flying banana?
Right.
Did you get to fly one of those?
I never did get to fly one of those.
How many
I don't
people
know.
that carry?
I think they can fit about 30 people in there. I'm not sure
30,
the exact
yeah.
number, but they can fit a lot of stuff in the back of that helicopter.
Did you choose aviation while you were at the West Point?
Right before we graduated, we got to choose, and
Choose your branch of service? And they
yeah.
gave it to you?
sure did. Lucky for me.
Things changed in the Army. If you pick aviation, it used to, well, it wasn't much aviation when I was in the Army, but if you did, they'd put you in a tank. If you
Oh,
picked
no.
tanks, they'd put you in a helicopter.
Luckily, I think they try to avoid that now.
Oh,
so.
do they? Do you really enjoy that career?
I did. It was great. It's been, like I said, a wonderful adventure. I got to do things I never thought I would be able to get to do, so.
Now, you have a lot of experiences, a lot of conversation at a tea party, don't you? With these other gals. You know, they talk about draperies and you talk
Right.
about a Black Hawk helicopter. Last week, I think, in the Parade magazine, they had an article about this all-woman unit. That they had the pilot, the door gunners, and everybody on this particular mission were
Really?
ladies flying the helicopters. The door gunners, the whole shot.
Interesting.
Yeah. And do you fly fixed wing also?
I do not. No. Just
You didn't get the
helicopters.
try. I thought they did that at Fort Rucker. Gotcha.
Nope, not every, if you can apply and try to be chosen for the program, but not everyone gets to do that, so.
Now, when you were doing your combat training, did you actually have this helmet that you can aim the guns and all of that, or?
No, the Apache helicopters, they have all the guns and missiles, and they have the cool helmet that will swivel the gun and that sort of thing. With the Black Hawk, we just have some crew chiefs in the back that get to aim and shoot, so,
So, with the Apache, you can look and shoot.
yes.
Did you get any of that type of training?
No, I just was training the Black Hawk. Some other people, they chose the Apache and they went and did all the gunnery and that sort of thing.
How many hours do you have in a helicopter now?
I've right at 700 hours.
That's a lot. Your
Yeah.
missions aren't that much, are they?
No, it's not quite as much. There's some people that have quite a few hours. Like you said, your friend had 2,500 hours, but it was a pretty good amount of flying, so.
When's the last time you were on active duty flying helicopters?
Well, when I was in Korea, unfortunately, I didn't get to fly much over there. So it's been a couple of years since I've flown. I'm currently in the reserves, and I'm not flying now either. So I'll see him fly overhead sometimes, and I do miss it. But it's neat just seeing him fly around.
Are you what they call a technician here? Is it,
Correct, right, yep. So I'm fairly new to the ROTC program at Akron. I've only been here for just over a month now. But already it's been a great experience. It's wonderful working with the cadets. They're so motivated and have so much energy, and it's really a fun program to be associated with.
You're an inspiration to some of these young ladies in there. Do many of them want to go into helicopters also?
None that I've spoken with, but I do hope that they can see that the barriers are starting to come down, and they can pretty much do almost anything in the Army that they want to do. So
It's a great career then.
definitely, I'd
You'd
highly
recommend it to a young
Mhm.
gal?
Sure would.
Adventure?
Exactly.
I guess flying a helicopter would be an adventure. I have to admit, I had one ride in a helicopter.
That's all?
That's all. When the guy went into hover, that's it.
Oh,
There's
no.
no flying machine should ever stop in midair. And then one engineer described it as parts all moving in the wrong direction.
I guess that's one way to look, but somehow it magically works,
It
so.
works. Have you had any problems, or is that a fair question?
No, luckily I never had any major, mechanical issues, so So that's good.
Well, that's a mark of a good pilot. You know, you ask them that, and I shouldn't use the word emergencies, but problems. They're trained for. So to a good pilot, there never are emergencies, really.
I guess
There's
in
some
theory.
problems.
Right.
And that you handle. You're taught to handle all these things.
Yep, we do practice them, and now they have these amazing simulators where you can go in and actually practice an emergency and see what it would look like, so.
Well, can you go into a reserve unit and do some flying now, even though you're at the ROTC unit?
It's possible.
You could go over to Akron, Canton, for example, or would you have to go back to school?
I'd have to go back to school and get retrained for that, so.
So what's your next step in the military? Your next assign? How long will you be here?
Well, I'll be here for a couple years, and like I said, I'm excited about the potential here at Akron, and it's a great program, and I think it will be a lot of fun for the next couple of years.
But no flying.
No flying.
You're not going to shoot at any of the bad guys.
No, not in the next couple of years, anyway.
And how was it? How did you pick West Point?
Well, you know, it wasn't really something that I grew up wanting to do. I didn't even really know much about it until maybe my sophomore year in high school. But once I started looking into it, I was fortunate enough to be able to go out there and visit the school, and just talking with the cadets and seeing what it was like out there, it just seemed like that's where I was supposed to be, so.
It's a great education, isn't it?
It sure is.
When they add the dollar amount, I've heard a figure of like, what, $500,000 education?
I've heard about 250.
$250?
Which
Well,
is still
how about
pretty good.
inflation?
Yeah, there we go.
Top of that. And will you go back on to active duty, or will you stay in a reserve component?
For right now, I'll probably just stay in the reserves. That seems to be, with my family situation right now, that seems to be the best option for me.
Well, you're full-time though at Akron,
Right,
aren't you?
correct.
And a full-time reservist.
Well, part-time reservist.
Oh, part-time?
Yep, so full-time at Akron.
I see. So you actually are still in the Army. You could be called back, couldn't you? Back
yes,
into helicopter outfit?
Possibly. I'm in the IRR, the Ready Reserve, so if they needed me, they could call me, but
Are you waiting for that call?
right now, I'm just happy being at
You got to pick
Akron.
up the red phone like everybody's
Right,
talking
right.
about when it comes at 3 o'clock in the morning. You'll be ready, right?
I'll be there.
Well, Captain, it was a pleasure talking to you. Talking to a lady flyer it's great. We had a program on Amelia Earhart and how she inspired a lot of women.
Right.
And women can go anywhere, do anything today. Flying combat, helicopters, jets, they're flying military transports. And it's a great career for you.
It is.
And you'd recommend it?
I would.
Okay, give us a commercial on that.
Oh, no, now you put me on the spot.
Just tell what a great life it is, okay?
The Army and aviation in particular is really a great adventure. Like I said, you get to do some amazing things that not everyone gets to do. You get to see the world from a different perspective when you're out flying around, which I'm sure you know. So I would recommend it. It's a great.
This has been the Ernie Stadbeck Show with your host, Ernie Stadbeck. To get in touch with Ernie, write to Ernie Stadbeck, 378 South Van Buren Avenue, Barberton, Ohio, 44203-4014. By phone at 330-644-7724 or online at erniestad@aol.com.